In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use AirManual to create and hand over a task checklist. You're going to see how it's quick to create, easy to hand over, and effective at helping your team to move faster. Now, if you haven't already, you need to start by deciding what task that you're going to document as a checklist. You could choose a task that can be delegated or handed over to another team member, freeing up someone's time. Or you could choose a task that's already been delegated, but where mistakes are common, or there's an opportunity to get everyone on the team following best practices. Or you could choose a task that only one person on the team knows how to do, which causes issues when they're sick or on holiday. Just make sure that you choose something that will make a big impact for your team. We want to be saving you hours every week, not just every year. As an example, I'm going to show you how I helped Paul, the owner of a printing business. He was working 60 hours a week and yet struggled to find time for the most important tasks. So our goal was to free up his time. And we found a task that was eating up 3 hours of his time every day. That's 15 hours per week, which was sharing quotes with customers. So that's where we started. The first step was to create a new page in our AirManual and give it a clear title, which in this case was Share a Quote. Now, this title clearly describes what this checklist will help someone to do, and it's much better than just quotes. If I'd called the page quotes, the page would have ended up being a dumping ground for anything and everything related to quotes, and that's not what we want. Next, we added a checklist to the page. Now, to do this yourself, click anywhere on the page and you'll see the insert menu appears at the bottom of the screen. Then simply click on the guided checklist button to add it to your page. Okay, so then we listed out the high-level steps that Paul was taking when he shared a quote. So these included review the request from the customer, add the details to our CRM system, calculate costs, add fees and profit margin, prepare the quote, and send to the customer. Okay. But Paul was nervous, and for good reason. He was worried that mistakes would quickly cost his business tens of thousands of pounds, right? So we added in an additional step before anything could be sent to the customer, which was get approval from head of sales. Great. So with less than 5 minutes of effort, we'd got the high-level steps documented. Next, we added some additional guidance to make the steps easier to complete. So that included a link to a worksheet that Paul was using to calculate some costs. And so we can use a hyperlink to create that link, and some guidance on how to use it. So perhaps there's a series of sub-steps and so on. We also included a screenshot to help people with a particularly tricky step, so you can add images and so on. But we didn't include screenshots and really detailed guidance at every single step in the process. That level of detail often isn't needed, and that's actually something you want to avoid. Because it'll slow you down when you're creating the checklist, and it will slow others down when they come to use the checklist for the second or third time. Finally, we thought about all the places where people might make mistakes that would cause big issues. For example, Paul explained that it'd be easy to forget to apply the correct fees, such as an additional fee for turning around a print job within 24 hours, essentially a rush job. So we added those in as steps. And in fact, Paul himself had made mistakes in this area in the past. So by having checkboxes, he could make sure that all of the important fees had been considered and that there was nothing missed. We also added in a help box to warn people about how important this step is, because they represented often such a big cost in relation to the project and were often missed. So we were able to include this help content to explain why these fees are so important to other team members. Now, for this specific checklist, it didn't feel necessary to add much more than that. At this point, the checklist felt complete. Paul then reviewed it with a fresh set of eyes and confirmed that he felt it covered all the important steps. But even though Paul had reviewed it, it still needed testing. Now, it can be really tempting to just hand over the checklist before it's been tested, and this is something I've tried myself more than once. The lesson I've learned is this usually backfires and will actually slow you down. So first, we got Paul to test it himself. So we published it, and then he simply clicked use this checklist and started working his way through it, following the process to see if he could send a quote using it. Now, he quickly identified that we'd missed a couple of important steps. So we just went in and added those into the process. Then, once we'd done that, we tested it with someone who wasn't Paul. So they clicked use this checklist to see if they'd be able to follow the process through without making mistakes or needing a lot of extra support. Again, we spotted a couple of areas that weren't clear enough, so we made tweaks and tested again. With those tweaks made, everything worked perfectly. Paul and the team were happy that they could do this task without costly mistakes or needing a lot of support. At this point, it was ready to hand over. We identified which team members would now take responsibility for the task, and the rest is history. The impact was immediate. Paul was able to be freed up for 15 hours per week by handing over this one task, allowing him to reduce his hours and as a result focus on more important tasks. But that wasn't all. Having handed over the task, the team started to make more sales, and this wasn't something that we had expected, at least not immediately. The reason? Well, when Paul was the only one sending quotes, potential customers would often wait 24 hours or more to get one. Once it had been delegated to his team, they were able to respond in hours rather than days. And in the printing industry, that quick turnaround makes a big difference. Okay, now it's your turn. If you haven't already, follow the same key steps that I took with Paul. So, create a new page, give it a great title, add a guided checklist, list out the high-level steps, add additional guidance where it's needed to make the checklist easier to use and avoid common mistakes, then test that it works, and finally, hand it over. With your new task checklist handed over, you should start to see a big impact for your team, just like Paul did. But remember, documenting and handing over tasks like this will be a new skill for you. If it feels like it isn't quite working as well as you'd like, then reach out to our team and we'll be happy to help.